Hey there, in the world of forensic science, there's this incredible idea that every injury tells a story. It's like every bruise, every cut, every burn is a chapter in a book, just waiting to be read. So today, we're going to dive into how forensic pathologists actually decipher these stories that are literally written on the human body. So let's start with a big question, right? If a body could actually talk, what secrets would it tell us about its final moments? Well, the crazy thing is, in a way, it does talk. And forensic science, that's the language we use to listen. And the people who are fluent in this language, they're called forensic pathologists. Think of them as interpreters for the body. Their whole job is to conduct this incredibly detailed examination, piecing together the entire story of what happened from the physical evidence, the clues, left right there on the body. All right, let's jump into our first topic, sharp force trauma. When a pathologist looks at a wound from a blade, they're not just seeing an injury. No, they're searching for answers to some really specific questions that can completely change the direction of an investigation. Okay, first things first. The very first question they have to tackle is this. Was this wound a cut or was it a tear? I mean, was the weapon something sharp-edged, like a knife, or was it something blunt, like a pipe? And believe it or not, the wound itself has the answer. So you and I might just call any break in the skin a cut, but for a forensic pathologist, it's way more specific. You've got two main types. A laceration, that's from blunt force. It has these ragged, irregular edges. But an incised wound from something sharp has really clean, neat edges. Now here's the absolute key difference, the thing they look for. It's called tissue bridging. See, with a laceration, stronger bits of tissue, like nerves or blood vessels, they don't break. They just stretch across the wound like tiny bridges. In an incised wound, nope. They're sliced clean through. That tissue bridging is the dead giveaway for blunt force trauma. Okay, so once they know the type of weapon, the investigation gets even deeper. Now they're looking at the pattern and the location of the wounds, because that can give them powerful clues about the manner of death. Basically, was it suicide or was it homicide? And the difference between the two can be pretty stark. On one hand, you have hesitation marks. These are usually shallow, parallel cuts in places that are easy to reach, like the wrists. It suggests someone was, testing the blade. But then you have defense wounds. These are a whole different story. They're usually deeper, more severe, and you find them on the hands and forearms, exactly where you'd expect to see them if someone was trying to fight off an attacker. The presence of defense wounds is a really strong sign that the victim was alive, conscious, and fighting for their life. So, a question that always comes up, especially in court, is, Doctor, how much force was used? And the truth is, it's not an exact science. You can't just give it a number. A pathologist makes what's called a qualitative judgment. They'll say it was mild, moderate, or severe force. And they base that on these four things: how sharp the knife was, if it hit anything tough like bone, the depth and length of the wound, and even the clothing. For instance, think about it. If a 2-inch blade makes a 4-inch deep wound, well, that tells you a ton of force was used to push and compress the body's tissue. All right, let's switch gears and talk about firearms. Bullets leave a totally unique and honestly pretty complex signature on the body. For a forensic pathologist, a gunshot wound is like this intricate puzzle of trajectory, distance, and the circumstances of the shooting. The first thing they usually try to do is figure out the bullet's path through the body. And that starts with telling the entry wound from the exit wound. Typically, the entry wound is smaller, rounder, and the skin around it is pushed in. It also has this thing called an abrasion collar, basically a little scrape mark where the bullet first hit. The exit wound, on the other hand, tends to be larger and way more irregular, with the skin pushed out. That's because the bullet is starting to tumble and lose its energy as it leaves the body. But, and this is a really big but, just like with everything else in forensics, things are not always as they seem. The story a wound tells can actually change over time, which can really throw investigators for a loop. Okay, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. On the left, you see the wound right when it was found at the scene. Now look at the right. That's the exact same wound, just hours later. See that dark ring around it? That's called a drying artifact. It looks a lot like soot from a close-range gunshot, right? But it's not. It's just the skin drying out. And this is exactly why those first photos taken at the scene are so critical for getting the story right. This leads us to probably the most crucial question of all when it comes to a shooting. How far away was the shooter? Was the gun pressed right up against the skin, or was it fired from across the room? All the clues you need are right there, around the entry wound. Generally, pathologists break down the range of fire into three main categories. First is a contact wound. This is exactly what it sounds like. The muzzle of the gun was in contact with the skin, and it can even leave a burn or an imprint. Second is intermediate range. Here, the gun is further away, but close enough that you get what's called stippling or tattooing. That's from tiny particles of unburned gunpowder hitting the skin and causing little abrasions. And finally, you have a distant shot. At this range, there's no soot, no stippling, nothing. All you see is the bullet hole itself and that abrasion color we talked about. And for our final topic, let's talk about fire. Now, when a body is found after a fire, the pathologist has one primary job, one question they have to answer. And the answer to that question can be the single thing that separates a tragic accident from a murder investigation. This is it. This is the big one. Was the person alive when the fire started? Think about what that means. Did they die because of the fire, or was the fire just used to cover up a completely different crime? The body itself holds the answer. And the answer isn't on the outside, it's on the inside. It's pretty simple, really. If you're alive and breathing during a fire, you're going to breathe in smoke. So pathologists will find soot deep inside your windpipe and lungs. They'll also find carbon monoxide in your blood. Your body will also show what's called a vital reaction, which is basically redness and swelling around the burns. Now, if all of those signs are missing, it's a very strong indicator that the person was already dead before the fire ever started. Okay, I want to clear up a huge misconception you might see in movies. Burned bodies are often found in this boxer stance, sometimes called the pugilistic attitude. It looks like they were fighting or defending themselves, but that's not what's happening. It's just a physical reaction. The heat basically cooks the muscle proteins, making them shrink and contract, which pulls the limbs in. It happens whether the person was alive or dead, so from a legal standpoint, it means absolutely nothing. So whether you're a doctor treating a burn survivor or a pathologist examining a victim, it's really important to be able to quantify the damage. You need a way to say just how much of the body was affected by burns. This is crucial for medical treatment, and it's also a key piece of evidence in any legal case. And the tool they use is something called the rule of nines. It's a super quick and pretty effective way to estimate the percentage of the total body surface area that's been burned on an adult. It basically breaks the body down into sections that are worth 9% or multiples of 9. Let me give you a quick example so you can see how it works. Let's say someone has burns covering their whole chest and abdomen. That's the entire front of their torso. Well, according to the rule of nines, that's 18%. Now let's say one of their entire arms is also burned. An arm is 9%. So you just add it up. 18 plus 9, that's a total of 27% of their body's surface area. It's simple, it's fast, and in a medical setting, it can be life-saving. So when you think about it, from the tiny microscopic detail of tissue bridging in a cut, all the way to a broad calculation like the rule of nines for burns, every single one of these techniques gives us a piece of the story. The final step is to put it all together. And that really gets to the heart of what forensic pathology is all about. It's this incredible combination of science, careful observation, and totally objective analysis. It's about taking these silent, physical clues and translating them into a clear, factual story, a narrative that can finally provide answers and maybe even a little bit of justice. So we've seen how these experts can read the stories told by blades, bullets, and burns. And it just makes you wonder, right? With every new scientific breakthrough, what other secrets are lying there in silence, just waiting for us to finally learn their language? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.